You're watching Adam the Bull on the BetRivers Network.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. If you're not using the BetRivers app, what the hell are you doing? You're lost in the soup, whether you want to bet on football, basketball, baseball, or tennis, or anything else, pretty much. Check out the BetRivers app. The Cleveland Browns are an utter disaster. If the season ended today, they would have the first overall pick in the draft. They have a coach who's been piss poor. They have a quarterback who's the worst in the league. In fact, he's been historically bad through 6 weeks. Is there any hope for the Cleveland Browns going forward this season? Well, I had some hope when Kevin Stefanski delayed his press conference on Monday for an hour. I thought that maybe he had finally come to his fucking senses and decided that he was going to bench Deshaun Watson. Or maybe he decided, you know what? I need to be a little more focused right now on clock management, on team management. I'm going to let Ken Dorsey call plays. Neither of those things happened. He gave the same sad sack answers in the press conference. He had the gall to say Deshaun Watson gives him the best chance to win. If that's the case, if the Deshaun Watson we've seen for the 6 weeks of this season, and frankly, pretty much the entire time he's been in Cleveland, gives him the best chance to win, then why the hell did they replace Joe Flacco with Jameis Winston? I've never been the biggest Joe Flacco guy. I always thought he was kind of overrated, and he lived off that one postseason run where he won the Super Bowl and was magnificent, all credit deserved. What he did last year here was pretty impressive. There were flaws to it, but it was pretty impressive coming off the couch, throwing for 300 yards game after game, and you could live with the turnovers when you're putting up big numbers like that, and they were winning games. He fell on his face in the playoffs. Were the Browns going to have a big season? If Joe Flacco was their starting quarterback, they going to win a Super Bowl? No. They going to make the playoffs? Maybe. Are they going to be better than they are now? Yes, they are. Somebody asked me the other day, what's the Browns record, you think, if they had Joe Flacco? Obviously, impossible to say, but my guess was they'd be probably 3-3 right now. Deshaun Watson, this has turned into the worst transaction in the history of football. I think if you combine the trade with the contract, it's worse than even the Herschel Walker trade, which was bad. And maybe that one should still be number one because the Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls off it, and we'll see what happens with Houston. And obviously they got C.J. Stroud having nothing to do with this trade, but they were able to, had they not traded Watson, who knows? Maybe they would never drafted C.J. Stroud. But some of the other guys they were able to get because of it. I said this yesterday on UCSS, but Andrew Berry should be fired. You think about some of the horrible things he's done in the last couple of years. The Deshaun Watson trade, disaster. Every wide receiver he's drafted has been a huge bust. Mike Hall, the guy's a bum. You drafted him in the second round. Anthony Schwartz, we talked. Cedric Tillman, David Bell, all busts, high picks. He dropped from the second to third round to get Elijah Moore. He traded for Jerry Jeudy, who's just a guy, and then paid him good money before he'd even played a game. And he's the same, just the guy that he was in Denver. The Jack Conklin contract, disaster. The list goes on and on. Andrew Berry's done a bad job. I was hesitant on the Andrew Berry extension last year when Stefanski got extended, and I was okay with it because it felt like they were a team. But I've always been underwhelmed by the job Andrew Berry has done. Like, what are his great moves? Yeah, he got Amari Cooper for nothing. That was a good move. I mean, there was really no risk in that trade. He gave up 5th-round picks for a good wide receiver. Why some other team didn't do it, I don't know. He's had the advantage of having a dopey owner that is willing to spend. Like Jimmy Haslam's a 0 as an owner, but he's a 5 out of 100. He's a 5 because he spends money, and people like that. The Browns are spending more than any team in football, and they got the worst team in the league. No team is in worse shape right now. If you look at like the future, if ESPN, I think, does like franchise rankings, the state of the franchise. And this franchise that seemed to be on the upswing as recently as last year now seems to be in worse shape than any franchise in all of football. What team's in worse shape? Okay, maybe Carolina. Well, they're not paying because all the other shitty teams are not stuck with an awful quarterback contract. The Broncos are in pretty bad shape, and their young quarterback has looked terrible so far. The Patriots, they got a bad team, but they have a young quarterback. We'll see. He's played one game. The Panthers are in bad shape. They made that terrible trade. They screwed up not taking C.J. Stroud. Like, they're in bad shape. But the Browns are just as bad as those teams and have all these terrible contracts, including Watson's. I was watching I don't even know, I was scrolling through some videos of it on Instagram between innings in the Guardians game last night. And I saw this video. I don't even know who it was. It might have been Chris Canty. I don't know. I can't remember. But one of the guys on the show suggested that the Browns trade Myles Garrett to the Lions, and they, instead of getting, like, for Myles Garrett, you probably get a minimum of a first-round pick plus maybe 2 first or second. I don't know. But this, I can't remember what it was, but he suggested that the Browns trade Myles Garrett to the Lions, but instead of getting draft picks in return, they forced the Lions to take Deshaun Watson in the deal, and the Browns essentially get nothing. I think technically you'd have to get something, so maybe they'd get a 7th-round pick. But, I mean, think about this. That's where we're at, where people are talking about, somebody actually suggested the Browns trade Myles Garrett to the Lions just to get rid of the Deshaun Watson contract. He's the best defensive player in the league, and you'd have to trade him to get rid of this contract. That's how bad this guy is. Deshaun Watson is probably finished in the league unless he somehow turns it around. They're going to keep playing him. They should move on after this year, but it's going to be hard. If you cut him, the cap hit is before. Well, let's say they cut him after June 1st. I think the cap hit's like $90 million for the next 2 years. They'd be better off just telling him to go home and not cutting him and wasting the roster spot. At least the cap hit's not that big. So it's obviously an utter disaster with not much hope in sight. I don't know. I don't know that there can be any team in worse position. Certainly they're in the conversation for the franchise that's in the worst position right now. Nick Chubb coming off a major injury. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Amari Cooper's a free agent at the end of the year. Myles Garrett's going to be pissed off. He may want to be traded. Batonio's getting old. Teller's coming off a lot of injuries. Denzel gets hurt all the time. All right, you got JOK for a while. That's good. You got Njoku. All right, he's all right. And you signed Jerry Jeudy to an extension to be your number 1 receiver next year. Beautiful. And does anybody trust Andrew Berry? If they don't fire Andrew Berry, does anybody trust him to get it right if they draft a quarterback? Can you imagine if the Browns have the 1st overall pick next year and don't draft a quarterback because they're somehow still committed to Deshaun Watson? By the way, one of the person that should be fired, the winning coach in the Browns game this Sunday, Nick Sirianni, is a clown of the highest order. He fights with fans. Dude, the fans, you make the money you do because of the fans that go to the game and pay for all these expensive tickets. Don't be an asshole. You barely beat the most pathetic team in football, the Browns, and you're talking trash to fans after the game? He's a dickhead. Nick Sirianni and his raccoon eyes should be fired. If I owned the Philadelphia Eagles, I'd fire his ass right now. He's a freaking disgrace. Folks, make sure you're using the BetRivers app for all your gambling needs. Thanks to Max for producing. Again, live show. We'll get our technical difficulties corrected. We'll be back live after Game 2 of the Guardians Tuesday night, tonight. And also after Game 3 on Thursday and Game 4 on Friday. And there will be a Game 5 on Saturday. And I'll be on live after that. I'll be live after the Browns game this coming Sunday as well against the Bengals. Browns-Bengals this Sunday. Maybe the return of Nick Chubb. Until then, thanks to Max for producing. We'll talk to you next time. Where else? But right here in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. See you, everybody.